everyone, and welcome to Book Solid. We are your hosts. I'm India.
And I'm Soraya, and today we are doing our bonus episode on Bridgerton. I am so excited to get into this. We have a lot of thoughts. I think we're going to say from the jump, they're not all good.
Yeah. I wish they were. I do, but we got to be honest. We're keeping it honest. We're keeping it real.
And people are free to disagree. I think most people love the show, so people are disagreeing, and that is totally fine. This is just our 2 cents on the matter.
Spoiler alert. Hey guys, just as a heads up, we will be revealing spoilers in this episode. If you haven't yet read the book or seen the show or film, this is a courteous reminder to proceed with caution. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to do a quick disclaimer. So most of my opinions and thoughts on the show are leaning negative at this point, but by no means is this, just an attack on anyone working at Shondaland or Chris Van Dusen. It's just simply us, talking about how we feel, how we connected to the material. And I think these types of conversations are important so that we can start to work to fix certain issues. Like specifically, I have a lot of thoughts on racial representation in the show. And, we have to talk about these things. If not, it's just going to keep happening. It's just going to be a continuous cycle. And so, yeah, I do want to preface that. It's not an attack. They're just opinions.
Yeah, just things we noticed and things that are, important to us or stood out to us as we were watching it.
Exactly. So with that being said, I guess I'll start off by asking you, Soraya, just your initial thoughts, general thoughts.
So here's what I will say. I had really high hopes for the show, just from seeing the promo pictures on Netflix, and I was like, ooh, we're getting, a period drama, but we have a super diverse cast. This is me all going off the promo photos. And, that's not something we've really seen before. And we talked about this in a previous episode. We're here for these reimaginings of history. And so I was really excited. And then when I watched the show, I was just kind of underwhelmed. It kept my interest for the first, I would say, probably 5 episodes, but by episode 6 I was kind of meh. And I honestly just forced myself to finish it because I was like, okay, I've already come this far. I only have 3 episodes left. I may as well.
Yeah.
And I was crocheting a blanket, so I needed something to have on in the background. But yeah, it was just kind of underwhelming. And so seeing everyone on the internet freaking out about it, demanding season 2. The price of the books shot up to $700 because the demand was, people were demanding it so much. And so, yeah, I just didn't really see the hype that everyone else was falling into. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a case of it being mismarketed or, what happened as far as that. Because like you said, when I saw these pictures, specifically when we're talking about Regency England and 19th century period pieces, I'm just accepting that me as a black woman, as a dark-skinned black woman, I'm not gonna exist, right? So unfortunately I tend to for that reason, and it's just honestly not my vibe. It's I usually don't gravitate towards Regency and period pieces in this time period. It's just not usually what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But Bridgerton was different, like you said, I'm seeing these promo pictures and videos and I'm this seems like an interesting take. This seems like something I haven't seen yet. But then I was quickly let down, unfortunately. But with that being said, I will say really quickly, something you brought up that it just glazed over my head. I didn't even realize it. But I love how the orchestra incorporated pop music.
I'm so glad you said that. That's one of the things I wrote in my notes, because that was a really cool, because when I was trying to get my notes on this show, and find things I enjoyed about it, I was gonna say it did seem to be a modern take, and I actually don't know if it really is that modern given a lot of the situations characters find themselves in or the belief systems. But I will say the fashion was good. The fashion, some of the architecture, and the music. I'd be sitting there and I'm oh my gosh, they're playing Bad Guy or Girls Like You, and that was just really cool. That made it definitely feel more modern or relevant to now, even though the things that they're dealing with are kind of dated. And yeah, and also we were just talking about this off air, but their costumes
And I will say, like, the set design, all that was really interesting visually. One of my favorite YouTubers, Hot Lamode, he has a fashion channel, and he actually covered the show, and I was watching his video last night, and he was talking about how, like, it's probably not historically accurate, but you know, this is a TV show, right? And so the creative liberties that they take definitely, in my opinion, made it more visually appealing. They were serving some looks at these parties.
Yeah, like, it was pretty, and the balls and parties themselves were very beautiful, and yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on.
So, yeah, let's get into it. So, I don't know. I'm honestly, I'm overwhelmed with, like, where to even begin. I will say also, I know we have that spoiler alert in the beginning, but, like, we're kind of going to be talking as if you've already seen the show.
Yeah, so we will be exposing Lady Whistledown, so if you don't want to know her identity, probably don't listen.
Yeah.
Or come back, you know, after you've finished. I kind of want to start with the worst person in the entire show, which to me is Anthony. They say, okay, it's spelled like Anthony, but everyone says Anthony, right? Or
yeah.
Okay, yes. He is the absolute worst person in the entire world. I despise him.
Is he irredeemable trash?
Yeah, we'll give it to Anthony for this one, because, like, just his territorial nature when it comes to Daphne is kind of disturbing, to be honest. And again, I understand it's a different time period, women were treated differently, looked at differently in this era, but it's just disturbing. He goes to such great lengths and protecting his sister's virtue, but then he also doesn't really know what he's doing. And he was so, like, hell-bent on setting her up with I don't even remember his name, Lord whatever the heck. Do you remember his name?
Lord Troubling, Lord Problematic.
Yeah, that really creepy guy. Like, he was so certain this was the best decision, and, like, I don't know, that even again, I understand that was common at the time, but she's what, 18?
You know,
17?
they never really specified, but I'm gonna assume she's probably like 18.
And he wants to marry her off to this man who's, like, in his 30s. He tried to sexually assault her, and he didn't believe her when she told him over and over and over that she didn't want to marry him. He didn't believe her or didn't listen when she said she didn't want to marry him and that he wasn't a good person. He only believed it when another man told him, when it was Simon. And, like, that definitely bothered me, just how little women's word was worth, how little they were valued, and they were just kind of treated as pawns. Like, the fact that they have money set aside to pay the men who marry the Bridgerton sisters or the Featheringtons, like that, I think that was called a dowry.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was very bothersome. And then I want to go off on how he treated Sienna, but we'll get there. I want to see how he felt.
Let's talk about it. So part of the reason why I tend to stay away from these period pieces and Regency pieces is because these patriarchal, antiquated themes are just so unpleasant to me and just so troubling. Like, you know, I'm looking for escapism, and I thought this was going to be like the escapist piece that us POCs need and we deserve, but it really wasn't. And with Anthony, you know, like you said, I'm trying to, in the context of the show and the time period, I'm trying to be on board, but it's just disturbing. And, like, I understand that their father passed away. This is a patriarchal, you know, era and family, and so he's now the father figure in the family, and he's dictating things. I detested the way that he spoke with his mother when she was like, "I'm your mom." So, like, and
she was running this joint way better than he ever could. Like, he didn't know what he was doing at all.
He didn't. Like, he didn't know how to listen to people. He was egotistical. He never took into account how his sister that he claims to love and be, you know, trying to help her out, he never took into account how she was feeling, what she was saying. Like, just listen, dude. And, like, yeah, you know, I feel like he was egotistical. And just moving into Sienna a little bit, because I know you want to talk about that. Absolutely not. Like, I can't even, like, just honestly thinking about it, it's making my blood temperature rise. Because, like, I'm just like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are that you are just so, you know, you're such hot stuff that people are just going to be waiting for you?
Because you're a Bridgerton.
Yeah, because you're a Bridgerton. I'm like, you're not that cute.
The sideburns gotta go, okay? it was, his sideburns were so distracting. That was all I could see anytime he was in a scene. I was just like, sideburn.
They were jumping up. They were clocking in early. They were at every scene. Okay, like
yeah. No, I want to say Sienna is the true heroine of this show for not taking him back, because I feel like like the core of romance dramas, or even like rom-coms and like modern television, is that these two people should be together against all odds, you know, regardless of what stands in their way, whether that be they're with somebody else. Like if we're talking about the Rachel and Ross situation, when he was with Julie, everyone's like, forget Julie, he needs to be with Rachel. And like, you know, people, it's like they're supposed to be together against all odds no matter what. And that is not true. Like, even if they're not good for each other. And I feel like it's very easy to like fall into that. Like when I start rooting for couples and shows, and I'm like, why am I even rooting for them? And so her not taking him back and like flipping that whole romance notion on its head, I loved it.
Yeah.
She knew her worth. She was like, I don't need to change for you. There's nothing wrong with me. I have a man who accepts me for who I am and doesn't make me feel bad that I'm not a part of this high society that you belong to. Because if she did take him back, that's all he would be trying to do, is make her into someone she's not and someone she doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
And also, I wouldn't want to be those people either. Look at the freedom that Sienna's living her life with. She's doing whatever she wants, whenever she wants. Good for her. Like, the life that Daphne and Eloise and all those Bridgerton women, even the Featheringtons, have, it seems terrible. Like, yeah, cool, money's nice and all, but oh my gosh, their life is so, like, regimented and
contrived and boring. And you know, honestly, I agree. Sienna was kind of a breath of fresh air, but it was definitely disturbing watching her go through, like, every time they were hooking up and having their little steamy moments, I was just like, you deserve better, sis. Like, you deserve better. He's not it. And I will say, that was one, like, vindicating moment in the show when we got that, you know, that scene in the season finale where I was so glad, because if she would have taken him back, I would have swiftly exited the Netflix app. Like, you know, it's just like, I just don't. And something else that's like really troubling with the whole series, or not troubling, but something that irritated me, is like, so it's kind of like, yes, you know, this is a period piece and there's these themes that are true to that time, but I got the sense that they were trying to, you know, flip some of that and subvert it and critique it, but they weren't really going ham all the way. So like, part of that is Anthony being like, you know, yes, we're from different classes and backgrounds, but we can still belong together. We can run away. Pause. Pump the brakes. That's not giving what you think it's giving, because like, if you really loved her, you're still worried about, and maybe that's the point, but you know, he's, at the end of the day, he's still concerned what others think about him. Yeah. Like, he's still, I'm a Bridgerton, I'm the man of the house, and I need to have, you know, this noble woman by my side. I can't have, you know, the opera singer. She's not worthy. Like, get over yourself, dude.
Truly. And on that idea, like, I want to know, why was it so, like, he was ready to marry Daphne. Sorry, I'm just thinking about this again really quick. He was ready to marry Daphne off to whomever just to get her married. And like, what was the rush?
Right.
Like, they kept saying like, oh, if you don't find someone this season, you can do it next season or whatever. Like, but why was he trying so hard? Like, I feel like he was just trying to prove to himself and to everybody else, like, I'm the man that everyone, like just like, he's the man.
Yeah.
Like, he had this idea that he was the head of the house and he's the man now and people are going to do what he says. And like, I feel like he was doing all this just to try to prove something.
Yeah, because he's a narcissist and he's egotistical and he got them sideburns.
Truly. And the way he was talking to Simon, I was like, you and Simon are one and the same, my friend. Two peas in a pod.
You're looking in a mirror. I don't know why if you don't like what you're seeing.
Those who live in glass houses. Because like, yeah, he was just acting like holier than thou with Simon. And I get it, it's because Simon was courting his sister, who he's like really territorial about, and so that was why. But it's like, if you're gonna demand better of him, you need to be better yourself.
Exactly. And I guess just kind of while we're on the topic of them trying to subvert certain themes, I kind of wanted to talk about Eloise a little bit, because Eloise, I got the sense that they were trying to have her be like this feminist voice during this time period. And I'm hoping that maybe their intent was to critique how like non-inclusive femininity looks, and like, you know, it's just like, I hope they were trying to critique how it looks when people are just doing it to be like trendy and like buzzwords and stuff. But like, She wasn't.
They missed the mark with Eloise.
Absolutely, entirely.
I want to, like, all I could think about Eloise when I'm watching the show, I'm like, Eloise holding a book is not a personality trait. Like, what bothered me so much about her is, like, what you're saying is, like, her feminism was not inclusive whatsoever. She had a very much, like, because I want to pursue an education and because I don't want to get married, I'm better than all of these other women. I'm better than Daphne because Daphne wants to be a wife and a mother. I'm better than all these society girls. I'm too good for this. And that's not what feminism is. It's about having the choice to be whoever you want to be. So Eloise, if you want to pursue your education and you don't want to get married, that is absolutely 100% fine. But if Daphne wants to get married and be a mother, that is also 100% fine.
And that's a full-time job. Don't downplay that. Okay?
Right there.
Raising a bunch of kids, like, that's a lot of work.
Right there. Yeah, she just is so elitist.
Yeah, like, she was so closed-minded and she was so stubborn in her closed-mindedness. Like, you know, I've got siblings. We're different people, you know?
And it's okay to be different people.
It's okay. Like, I would never step to one of my sisters and be like, you're living your life differently than me. Why didn't you major in film? Like, what the heck?
Exactly.
That's so weird. And it's just like, yeah, it's just, you know, if you truly love your siblings and you're trying to look out for your sister, that's not doing it. Because that's one thing. I get you, Eloise, actually. Like, you know, I understand the sentiment of wanting to read and learn and see the world. And yeah, I understand that you don't want to live in this, in my opinion, boring society.
Yeah, confined.
Yeah. However, it's not your place to go and, you know, just, yeah, there's like a few scenes throughout the series where she literally just walks up to Daphne as Daphne's getting ready for a ball and just like, that's so irritating. I can't believe you want to live your life like this. Like, what is Daphne supposed to say? She likes this, right? Like, this is what she wants. She is okay with trying to find a husband. She's going through it, but you know, that's her focus at the time. And it was just so irritating. I'm like, I don't understand what this is doing to serve the story. It's not serving the show. It's not interesting every time she's on the screen. My blood pressure's raising. What is it doing?
Yeah, and she could have been a really interesting character. I mean, like, seeing her being forced into this, like, she's very vocal about this not being what she wants, but her mom is, like, you know, making her do it. And, like, there's those scenes at night where she's kind of outside. I think she was smoking once, and, like, she came across her brother, Benedict.
Yes.
And she was telling him, like, how lucky he is because, you know, he's a man in this world, in the society, and he has free reign. He can explore and learn and do what he wants without being tied down to this obligation of marriage and family. And like that, she just could have been a very interesting character. That's something very difficult to go through. I couldn't imagine being forced into that kind of situation when, you know, it's the last thing you want. And I just wish she would have been written a little bit differently because the way she was written felt a bit contrived, in my opinion.
No, I absolutely agree.
I kind of, maybe we should save him for last. Let's see, maybe we should move into Simon and Daphne.
Simon and Daphne.
Let's save them.
They're
the hot ticket items. So, do you want to talk about Penelope, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm ready to get into Penelope. I just want to preface this by saying as well, so this will come up shortly in this episode. Me at the beginning, I was talking about how I'm critiquing racial representation, but I also want to critique how, okay, I'm just gonna say this. I didn't know this. I was watching a YouTube video by the channel Costuming Drama, where they were critiquing the show on a panel of, I think it was like 6 or 7 women. And I learned, I didn't read the books. I have no plans or intentions of reading them. But I learned that originally everyone was white. And so yeah, that'll come up later. But with Penelope, it was like a whole thing of her being a plus size character. But I feel like it's always a thing in these shows and movies where plus size characters are antagonized or deemed as unlovable or just vilified. And for what? You know, like this could just be me because I don't like her character, and I imagine some other people do, but I do think, and it does come up with like how her sisters talk about how her mother talks about her, like, stop, we need to stop doing this. This is a reimagined, we're taking creative liberties. Why couldn't she have been deemed as the prettiest sister.
Yeah, like, why does she have to be the one pining after an unrequited love?
Exactly.
How many times have we seen that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah, and it's just, and moving into, like, okay, so I really feel for what Penelope's going, like, it cannot be easy to see the person you're in love with, you know, flirt with everyone but you, or you know, he treats Colin, she's in love with Colin, and he kind of treats her like a sister because their families are so close. And, you know, she sees him flirt with everyone in London and falling in love with Marina, her cousin, and, like, that cannot be an easy thing. But what made me upset about Penelope is she really made herself a victim when she never even told Colin how she felt. So she's over here distraught, upset, big, you know, she's Lady Whistledown, so she's the one who dropped the fact that Marina was pregnant, besmirched her family's name, and for what? For a guy who doesn't even know how you feel about him, but you are so certain that he won't reciprocate. And so it's, like, hard to empathize at a point, because you're like, then say something. If you want it to be different, then say something, do something. Like, you can't expect him to just jump up and be like, you know what, I'm suddenly in love with Penelope, when he has no idea how you feel. And, like, you know, I'll be honest, when I like people, I'm like, you know what, they'll just figure out I have a crush on them. They'll get from point
telepathically, if I look at you and look away, you should know that I'm madly in love with you.
Right, like, you'll get from point A to point B. I don't have to say anything. No. So I get it. But, like, also, you know, if she wanted something out of it, she needs to just do something about it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, we watched the show separately at different points, but maybe I yelled it at my TV in my room. I don't know. But, like, and we've talked about this in the Normal People episode from last season. If you haven't watched it, check it out. But this idea of miscommunication destroying relationships.
Yes.
Ugh.
It makes me so mad, and that's, like, the core of so much drama in every, like, TV show and or book, because it makes for good drama, but it bothers me so much.
Yeah, and I would argue it's kind of lazy writing sometimes, because of course there's going to be miscommunication, you know, it happens in real life, but if that is your way to create drama every single time, do better.
Yeah,
like, you got to do better. And specifically with Penelope, I just wanted more for her. And like you said, I'm not going to sit here on my high horse and act like, you know, this idea of unrequited love is so above me, and, like, I've never experienced it, because I don't tell my crushes when I have a crush on them. They'll
know. They'll know, you know?
They're just supposed to know. Like, they're supposed to look at me and be like, oh, she likes me. Let me ask her out. But yeah, like you said, I think the more that I think about it, the fact that she is also Lady Whistledown makes her into, it's the reason why I don't like her even more so. And it's because she's in a position of power. And yes, it's like this omniscient narrator voiced by Julie Andrews, and, like, you know, she knows everything. But in real life, the way that she's navigating her interpersonal relationships, she's at a position of power because she knows all the tea, right?
Yep. And people are telling her trustingly, or trusting in her, you know?
Yes. And so that makes me feel like she's a manipulator, because she's, you know, having Marina Thompson and Eloise and everyone's confiding in her, Colin, and then she's like, you know what, let me go publish this and
go spill that tea.
And you brought this up outside of the show, but, like, she's doing this at the expense, or earlier in this episode, but she's doing this at the expense of her own family.
Exactly.
At her own family. Like, do you have no values?
Yeah, for a boy. Arguably the best boy in the whole show personality-wise. Like, I feel like I didn't like anybody in the show except for Colin.
Yeah.
But, and we'll get into that, but, yeah, it just, and it's so funny, because I think we said this outside of the episode we were talking, but I was so caught up when Lady Whistledown's identity was revealed and it was Penelope. I was so caught up in, like, wow, she's the one who spilled Marina's secret, that I didn't even think about all the other stuff that Lady Whistledown had revealed the whole season. Mm-hmm. You know, like, exposing Daphne and Simon's courtship to be a sham, and all of this other stuff. Like, she had no regard for these people in her life that are supposedly her friends and her family.
Yeah, and that's not an attack at all on the actress who plays the role of Penelope. I want to make that very clear. But I definitely am questioning the show creators, like, their decision to have this character. Like, on one end, it's nice that she's this important character. She's Lady Whistledown. You know, she's the talk of the town. arguably one of the most important characters in the whole show.
Eloise is gonna be mad when she finds out, guys. Right? She's gonna be jealous.
Yeah, you know, so that's definitely interesting, but I'm just like, the fact that she is one of the main or most noticeable, prominent plus-size characters, and there's all these negative adjectives you can throw on to her character, like, we need to be very mindful of how we're depicting folks. Period.
Yeah, and I, like, up until their identity was revealed, I liked Penelope. Like, you know, I could feel for what she was going through. It was difficult. I just started to get frustrated with her towards the end, because I was like, okay, just do something about it. Especially when he said he was leaving, and then she just, like, let him leave and started crying. Like, that was your opportunity. Because if he felt the same, great. If he didn't, he was leaving. You had time for you both to move on, get over it, whatever. Yeah, but, like, I did feel for her, and, like, I liked how caring she was toward Marina. She was the only person showing Marina any kind of compassion in a very difficult situation, but then she ultimately betrayed that trust.
Yeah.
So it kind of just, like, negates all of the good character building they did for making her seem like this really compassionate, kind person when her whole family was kind of, you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Like, I was rooting for her up until her, up until she betrayed Marina.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'm just like, okay, so you betrayed her, but you're not even being, like, emotionally honest with yourself or with others. So, like, what is the point?
Yeah.
Why are you just ruining her life now? Just for what? Because you're jealous? Speak up. And, you know, Marina puts 2 and 2 together towards the end of the show, and she's like, oh, so you're in love with Colin. That's what's going on. But that still doesn't excuse your behavior. It wasn't really your place, in my opinion, to do that.
Yeah. And speaking of that about Marina, I feel like part of why Penelope did expose her was because of what Marina said when she found out. When she was like, oh, you love him. And she kind of snubbed Penelope was by being like, he only sees you as a girl. He sees me as, like, a woman and a wife, and I could provide a life for him that you can't. I feel like that's part of why Penelope did what she did, out of spite, because it was like she was mad and it was petty.
Yeah.
I'm not excusing it at all. Like, I still don't think that was a good enough reason to do what she did. But, and trying to play devil's advocate, beyond being, like, in love with Colin romantically and infatuated with him, I think she did care about him.
Yeah.
And, like, Colin did seem to be, like, a good guy or a better guy than a lot of the men in this show. And so she didn't want to see him be, like, trapped into this marriage with a baby that wasn't his,
right,
that he wouldn't know wasn't his, or being, like, in a marriage with someone who doesn't really love him. So at the base level, I can understand why she was so adamant again, like, about them not being married. Her own feelings aside, she didn't want to see him in that situation, and I can understand that. But she didn't have to. If she really felt like that, she could have talked to Colin privately. She could have talked to Marina and said, you need to be honest with Colin, or I will tell him.
Exactly. And that, I think if she would have done that, I would have felt differently, because that's what an emotionally mature person does.
Yes.
But she didn't do that.
No.
And also, just really quickly before I forget, while arguably Colin is probably my favorite character in terms of, like, being actually good, being a decent natured person, I do feel like his character, he was a little
nice guy.
Yeah. Like, we're kind of lacking in, you know, like, we get it, like, you're the good guy. Yeah, I wanted more for him, and I really strongly wanted more for Marina Thompson.
She could not catch a break.
Not once. Not at one point in the whole show. It just proceeded to get worse. And it's also really upsetting because on YouTube, the YouTuber The Feminine Fancy, she has a really interesting video on the show. I highly recommend it.
I'm gonna write all this stuff down.
But she talks about how, and this is something I didn't really think about, but this is a romance show, right? And often they're going to be marketed towards younger women. And the fact that, you know, it's claimed as being, like, this diverse show, but in terms of, like, the black women on the show, most of them are older. So we have, like, Lady Danbury, Queen Charlotte. So for younger black women, the representation is not really there. But then it's like, okay, we have Marina Thompson. But then look at her storyline, you know? And at first, when she comes into town, it's like, oh, this is interesting. Like, you know, we're assuming from, like, a lower class than her, you know, distant family members that she's living with now, the Featheringtons. But quickly her storyline, it just takes a steep decline, because at first she's like the new beautiful one, and it's like, oh, is it
Everyone's
her
trying to court her?
exactly, like her and Daphne, you know, they're the beautiful ones. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But then
then Lady Featherington slaps her. Well, I was like,
yeah, what,
excuse me? And then she's trying to pair her up with this really old creepy guy, and,
yes,
you know, then she fakes those letters from George telling her he doesn't love her. And then, like, okay, maybe this is gonna sound bad, maybe it's a hot take. Okay, I understand what I'm about to say might not be the best thing. I low-key wanted her to marry Colin, because, okay, she's in a really bad situation. She is a young, unmarried, pregnant woman, which at this time may as well be the absolute worst thing that can happen to you. And, like, while it would have been awful for Colin to be trapped into this marriage, like, she was trying to survive. And this was her best prospect. And I do think that she loved Colin or cared about him. She could have, they didn't know each other well enough to be in love. He says he loved her. I don't believe it. They were in lust, maybe, or like. I do think that they could have fallen in love with each other. I think they could have been happy, both of them, in that situation. And so, like, I don't know. I just wanted her so badly to be okay that I was low-key rooting for her to marry Colin, because the show makes it seem like you're not going to be okay unless you get married. So it's like, all right, well, if she has to marry someone, Colin's the best prospect here.
Right. And quickly to that point, that's why that scene that really just, like, punched me in the stomach, when, you know, it's revealed that, you know, she has the baby and stuff, when Colin says, if you would have just told me.
I hope that's true, and I hope he's not just saying it for like the sake of saying it, because now they'll never know.
That's true.
But I hope that is true. And then there's part of me, like, in my head, she did tell him, and he decided to marry her anyway, and everyone's fine. Because, like, I don't know, does that make me a terrible person? Like, I'm not saying I would ever do that to somebody in real life, obviously, but, like, what's going on in this situation? It just seemed like the only way she was going to be okay, and time was running out for her, and he, like, who knows what she would have, and I mean, she ends up marrying George's brother, but, like, she could have been stuck with that creepy old guy, who would have been like, ew, he gave me abusive vibes, and I just, like, I don't know, I feel like it was the best of her bad situation.
Yeah, you know, it was just extremely disappointing that one of the only younger, like, black woman in the show was dealt such a bad hand. And it's just like, in the Feminine Fantasy, in her video, she talks about how, like, it's like black women in media are both, and we ourselves talked about this a little bit in our very first episode, Little Fires Everywhere. You guys should also check that out if you haven't yet. But it's like, on one hand, we're dehumanized, desexualized, unlovable, undesirable, but then on the other hand, while also being hypersexualized, because, you know, we can't overlook the fact that one of the only younger black character with speaking lines in the show is pregnant.
Yeah,
you know,
at what, 15, 16?
This is a trope, guys. This is a stereotype. This is a harmful, negative stereotype. We're
tired.
We're very tired. We're very tired, and I feel very strongly about this, because I can't stress enough, and I know, you know, everyone knows, like, I was a film major. I'm very passionate about TV shows and movies, but it's like, you know, I can't stop thinking about when I saw Black Panther for the first time in theaters in February, and I rarely cry in real life. I don't know what that's about. I just don't really cry that often. But when I tell you there were tears in my eyes from happiness, like the emotion I felt seeing Lupita Nyong'o on the screen as this beautiful, lovable, desirable black woman.
And these characters, I was gonna say, I cry all the time, and I cried. So, but yeah, they're strong, they're fierce, they're smart, they're determined, they're like, and seeing the success of the film too, like seeing it come to life on the screen and how amazing it was, then seeing the commercial success that followed, showing people like, hey, stories with black people can do well. Take note, literally everyone in Hollywood. Like, I just can't. There's no words to describe how that felt. Yeah, like, representation is so much more important than people think, because, you know, as a technology-driven culture and society, what we see really dictates how we act in person. Like, there's some people who, if they've never seen a particular ethnic group, what they see on TV is going to dictate how they think about, and I'm not saying that's right, because it's wrong, but it's like, for example, when
when my niece, she's 7 right now, when she was like 2 or 3, I was wearing my hair natural a lot. It was summer. I was home from college and I was babysitting her, and I would wear my hair out in like a little curly afro situation. I was doing twist outs, watching a lot of YouTube videos. And so she's a toddler and she's seeing this, like, okay, that's Auntie India. This is how she wears her hair. And I go back to college and I called my mom one day and she said that they went to Target and my niece is in the cart and she sees a black woman with natural hair on a poster at Target, and she goes, Auntie India. And like, you know, this is like, I don't know, 5 years now, or 5 or 4 years ago, but I still think about that because it's like, that's so important. Like, she's seeing representation and she's making connections.
Okay, this reminds me of a story I saw. I think it was like on Instagram or somewhere on social media, but it was this guy who works at a comic book store, and there was a little boy who came in all the time with his mom, and he was black. And his favorite comic book hero was Spider-Man. So he would come in, get different Spider-Man comics all the time, and one day the little boy asked the guy working there, like, oh, who's your favorite comic book hero? And the guy said Spider-Man, and the little boy's like, oh my gosh, mine too. And he said, well, which Spider-Man do you like? And the guy working there went and pulled I can't remember if it was like a book or something with Miles Morales. And the little boy was like, but this Spider-Man looks like me. And he like started smiling, and he's like, mom, look, this Spider-Man looks like me. How do people, it makes me want to cry just thinking about it. Like, it's just, how do people not understand how important that is when you've been erased for so long? And it's just like, I don't know how to make people understand why it's so important. I had a friend once who was like, but why does it really matter? And I'm like, do you have a year for us to sit down and chat about why it's important? Like, just the privilege and even being able to ask that question, why does it matter? You know?
Exactly. And, you know, we're a book show. I will be fully honest, like, honestly, I'm so grateful for the show, and I say this like every episode, but like, I went through a period for like, I don't know, 5 years or so where I wasn't reading a lot. Like, this is college, I wasn't reading for fun. I was hardly reading for class. We can talk about that.
That part right there.
Assigned reading, absolutely not. I don't do that. I don't know what that is. I don't know.
I wasted many $1 bills on textbooks.
But that being said, in high school, and me and Sarai have talked about this, I don't know what was going through my brain, but like, you know, on top of academics, on top of extracurricular activities, I was popping out 400-page books.
A reading machine. Where did I find the time, the energy?
Like, I was reading so much, y'all. But I remember I was like 15 or 16, and I reached a point where I'm like, I love all these books. I was reading my little sci-fi dystopian books, and I'm just like, none of these characters are described to look like me. I don't exist. Like, the message is very much, you are not lovable. You're not desirable. You're not
seen.
You're not seen. You're not the one people care about, you know?
I'm pretty sure the first time that I ever saw someone who even could kind of look like me reflected in a book was sophomore year of college, and it was Everything, Everything by Nicole. And even then, the main character, she's half black, half Japanese. But like, the way she was just like describing her character, I was like, oh wow, a character who's half black, or at least black at all. Because like, you know, like, it just doesn't, that was the first time where I was like, okay, I can kind of see a character looking like me. And I was 20 years old. And specifically, that makes that mainstream level, you know, that is picked up for an adaptation. Like, that makes it to this level where we're talking about it. Because I do say, like, I definitely want to make a point to do more research and uplift independent black authors who are showcasing these types of stories. And I've definitely made a point to do that as I've gotten older. But I remember I was like 15, 16, and I had this. And so what I started doing was, like, I continued to read my books that I liked, but I was very, very invested in like casting characters in my head. So, you know, I'm in chapter 1, chapter 2, and I literally would write down all the character names, and then I would cast them. So I would find like popular actors I liked at the time. And I'm like, okay, so we have Harry Styles as, you know, PETA, and okay. I guess I was going to say really quick, I guess I could say, like, I read Rue in high school, or I read Hunger Games in high school, and so Rue is black, and so that was a black character, but she wasn't the main character, and also people apparently don't think she was black. when the movie came out, people were really mad about Amanda Stenberg playing her. They're like, oh, they have to put black people in everything. People were literally saying this.
It was in the book, and I remember. It was in the book.
Rue and Thresh were both black. Go consult your source material, please.
Yes. Argue with your mama, don't argue with me. No, you're absolutely right. I was so confused by that because I distinctly remember being happy to, feel represented when I read that book because I was like, oh, Rue's black. Like, that was... And then people were confused. I'm like, did you read the book? Because I don't know where this anger is coming from. And same thing with Divergent, the character of Christina. I believe Zoe Kravitz went on to play her in the movies, but people were like, what is this about? I'm like,
we can't have anything.
We can't have it. Like, do I exist?
They're not even main characters. Y'all are pressed about a side character who dies halfway through the movie.
And that's another point. Like, with... okay, it's like the token black friend or the token representation. We need to stop that because something I feel like Bridgerton could have done, like, yes, I feel like it was a thinly, veiled attempt at inclusivity, but like, where were, the other POC representation? Like, why didn't we have diversity in
outside of just like black and white?
Yeah, like the world is not just black and white. Like, where is, my Southeast Asian characters, Latinx characters with speaking roles that are prominent leads, and like where are we?
Yeah, I totally agree. And we were talking about this outside of the episode, but I almost wish that if they were going to do this, that they would have gone the route of like Hamilton, wherein the diversity of the cast did not, like, it didn't influence the way the show went. Like look at the Schuyler sisters. You have one sister who's Chinese American, one sister who's black, and one sister who I think she's half black, half white. Crap, now I'm blanking on the actress's name. Jasmine.
Oh yeah.
What is her name? Cephas Jones, I think is her name. Something like that.
Yes.
I think she's half black, half white, or maybe, I don't know, multiracial. I'm not sure. But, like, that didn't affect the storyline at all. They're sisters. That's it. That's all you need to know. No one said, hey, how come these sisters look different? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really kind of wish that Bridgerton would have just gone that route instead. Because I almost feel like that would have worked better and allowed for just, like, greater diversity.
Yeah, and it's like, you took these creative liberties with the costume designing and by rewriting history with Regency England, having black characters who can be the Duke of Hastings and stuff. Like, I get that, and that's cool, but go the step further, you know? Like, you have... This is 2021. You literally... The show is on a streaming service. Like, 10 years ago, if someone would have told you that... They wouldn't have understood. Like, if you got in a time machine right now and you went to, like, 2011 and you were like, okay, there's going to be original shows coming out on Netflix, and, well, actually, let's go 20 years further. We're 2001, okay? This is groundbreaking times in TV right now, and you mean to tell me we're still... catering to these really contrived and stereotypical depictions? I'm tired.
Yes, and they could have, like, if they were going to go for it the way they did go for it, they should have really done it, because they kind of had this like half-assed conversation about race in the show. Like, because at first when I started watching the show, I did get kind of the like Hamilton approach where I was like, oh, okay, like their ethnicity doesn't really matter in terms of their social standing or life experience. Like, everyone's just kind of living their lives, and I was like, okay, they're gonna do that. But then like halfway through, Simon and Lady Danbury had that conversation about like, oh, we used to live separately until King George, right? Yeah. Until King George married Charlotte and made her queen and like brought us together. And I was like, oh, so they are approaching race in this, but then that's the only thing they ever said,
right? And
then also the way Lady Danbury said it almost made it seem like they like blessed them by even looking at them, or him choosing to marry a black woman. Like, I don't know, that was a really weird, out of place conversation.
It was, and it was so disappointing. And it's like, I almost wish that they would have taken that approach, like Hamilton, or even like that 90s take on Cinderella with Brandy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Muppets Wizard of Oz, Ashanti was Dorothy. I know it's a Muppets movie, and okay, I was like 6, but I loved it. Okay,
still, like, let's do that. That's more interesting to me, because it just, when that came up, it's like, what, halfway through the show, towards the end of the show, and it's just like danced around. Like, if it is gonna be, if you're going to be conscious about race during this time, then let's address that head on, and let's do that from episode 1.
And they tiptoed with a lot of things. I know we're kind of getting off into like more general topics here, and we have a couple characters we want to talk about, so we'll circle back, and we'll have timestamps in this episode so you can see if you want to listen to certain things. But I feel like they really tiptoed around a lot. Like, to me, I felt a lot of sexual tension between Benedict and that guy artist. What was his name?
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, if you're gonna have him explore his sexuality, then do it. Like, why'd you hint around it? And it just kind of seemed like a very tiptoey kind of thing. Like, I definitely thought, do you remember the artist's name?
I don't.
I can't remember his name. But yeah, so Benedict and that guy, like, I definitely thought that there was going to be something there. And I was like, okay, like, let's see what happened. And then nothing.
Right. But they did take a chance to go ahead and, I guess, vilify the only notable LGBT plus character in the show, that artist guy. I wish I should have looked up his name. But the guy who plays the artist that Benedict is friends with, because he, from what I recall, yeah, there were, like, a couple of sex scenes with him and another man. And Benedict sees this and he's like, whoa. But it's just like, we also find out that artist friend has a whole wife, and so this is very much adultery, and I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, it just like, and I don't know, he made it seem like his wife knew towards the end. Like, there was that scene where they were talking at a party, I think in episode 8, where it low-key made it seem like the wife knew, but I'm not sure if I was like picking up on things. And like, if that's the case, I can kind of get behind it, only because they both know that the society that they live in, he can never be with the man he's in love with, and she can never be unmarried. So
okay, like, maybe I missed that.
And I can't, now I don't know if I'm like remembering it properly, but like, if that's the arrangement, then I'm cool with it. If she's like, all right, I'll marry you for the social standing, you can go be with whoever you want to be with, because she's the one also at that like game night or poker night that the women have,
right.
And she makes it seem like she doesn't really care what her husband's doing.
Okay.
But then it also like, because that's when he tells Benedict like how hard it is to be in love with someone he can't be with in public. He's like, I can't even so much as smile at him at public events. And maybe that's why there was no relationship between Benedict and the artist guy, because he was in love with someone else. Okay. So now that we're talking about it, if that's the route they were going, then okay, then that's better. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay. So I will say, if that's, I blanked on that. If that's the route that they were going, I can get behind that. And like them, I guess them being in somewhat of an open relationship at that time period, that's definitely, you know, a hot take, and that's different and new and exciting. But then I also kind of wonder, I wish the wife, if she's happy, I'm happy, but if she did actually want a chance at, you know, having a partner who loves her, I wish she could have had that.
Yeah, and it's also kind of unfair because, and this made me really mad, so I'm glad we got to this point. It's also kind of unfair because I feel like, I feel like, it's true, men had more freedom at this time. Yes. So while maybe they did marry under that arrangement, he has the freedom to go be with who he wants to be with, even if he was cheating on her and people knew. I mean, if they knew it was a man, I think that'd be an issue. But if it was with a woman, I don't think they would care. Men cheated all the time in this time period. But if we caught her with somebody else, that would be the end of her. So how much freedom does she really have, even if this is the arrangement? And what made me irate was that Anthony was willing to die over Daphne's virginity, y'all. He was willing to die. First of all, can we talk about how freaking stupid duels are? That is literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I digress. But yeah, he was ready to duel Simon, willing to die because he kissed Daphne before they were married. Kissed. That's all he did. Kissed her. I think he touched her butt. Okay. And yeah, so he was willing to die for that. But then when Colin said he wanted to marry Marina, he was like, oh, Colin, you're too young. You're trying to get married too fast. It's my fault. You didn't get to sow your oats. I should have taken you to a brothel when you got back from your travels. What? The double standard. Oh my gosh, it made me so mad.
Here's something that I, you know, at my big age of 23, for the life of me, I cannot understand this idea, because I'm recalling the rapper T.I. He came under fire with his, just Google it. I don't even want to talk about it on the show personally, but he has some really disgusting, antiquated takes on virginity that he talked about on a podcast or radio show or something in regards to his own daughter. But it's like, you know, men have this notion, or not all men, but specifically these types of men like Anthony in the show, like, okay, so your sister, she's this pure, you know, untouchable being who can't even so much as kiss the man that she's supposed to marry. But that's a whole nother thing. You know, she's untouchable, but Sienna is on a different level.
You can have sex with her out in public, pressed up against a tree. Because that's how we met you, Anthony.
Yeah. So it's just like, you know, who are these women? So like, why are they, you know, it's all like, and it's just how, you know, in our society, men are raised to, you know, experiment with your sexuality in high school, and oh, they're just men, that's all they think about.
Boys will be boys.
Yeah, but it's like, but you know, if your daughter, God forbid, she does the same thing, who's also a teenager with hormones and all that, whatever, puberty crap, but it's just like, the double standard, it literally doesn't make sense when you really think about it, because it's like what I just said. What is the difference between Daphne and Sienna?
And speaking, even like, people are like, well, this is a dated thing. This is, you know, now people don't. No. Purity balls exist. Yeah? Have y'all heard of that? It's disgusting. Ugh. It's when like 9-year-old girls pledge to their fathers that they will be pure until marriage. What? And there's a whole ball, and they wear a white dress. There's so much. That's a whole nother episode. Yeah. We don't have time to unpack all of that today. But that is just, why? Are there purity balls for young men? No, there are not, my good friends. There aren't. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And specifically at that age, like I've talked about this in our last episode, or it's come up. Like, I have issues with sexualizing children, period. So at 9 years old, a ball, I'm sorry, that makes my stomach hurt. And then it just, like, these girls grow up with this, like, warped sense of their own selves. Yeah. And I'm not like shaming anyone. Like, it's up to the individual person. Yes. If you want to have sex when you're married, if you want to have sex before you're married, if you want to have sex whenever, that is your own personal decision. Mm-hmm. So to grow up with like this weight, when you start feeling very natural sexual urges, right, feeling like you're disappointing your father, yeah, or you're a deviant, and you're yeah, it's so dated, and I just it's to the detriment of that young girl, and it's to this, yeah, I just am not here for it. I can go on a whole tangent. Yeah, we got way off topic. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that topic, but I guess just circling back, yeah, I was very disappointed in how they touched on these topics and made it seem like they're going to tackle, you know, like, how cool would it have been to have, I mean, I guess, like, we do have LGBT representation in the show, but I just felt like they were always dancing around it, and, okay, we'll kind of have this character, and, you know, he's a minor side character. It would have been interesting if Benedict, you know, like, they were hinting at, like you said, but I wanted Benedict and that artist to get together. I did too. I was waiting. The chemistry was popping off the screen. It was sizzling hot. You know, but they were just like, no, like, we can't do that for whatever reason. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this entire series, which would be Daphne and Simon. If you're ready to get into them. I am. I didn't like Simon. I'm gonna say it. I didn't like him. I don't think he's this sexy, suave, like, coveted guy that they make him out to be. He just doesn't do it in so many ways. Like, I'm just not into him. And yeah, it's just funny because I saw, like, Penguin Random House, or no, not Penguin Random House. Somebody. No, it was Netflix. It was Netflix YouTube account. Mm-hmm. They posted, like, these 4 pictures of Simon, and, like, which version of Simon gets you out of bed in the morning? And I was like, none. 0 zilch. Keep him away from me at all costs. He just wasn't a good guy. And go ahead. Yeah. You know, Simon was so incredibly disappointing. And I have to say it because I'm me, and this is this is my take on it all. Simon being, you know, one of the other prominent Black characters in the show, it's really disappointing that, like, he's feeding into some very stereotypical portrayals of Black men in romantic relationships that, you know, yeah, like, specifically I want to talk about this. It also comes up in the Feminine Fancies YouTube video, and we've talked about it outside of the show, but, like, the older that I get, the stronger I feel in this whole idea of, if somebody really likes you or loves you, you're going to know. We're not doing this whole... You're not chasing them. No. We're not changing them either. Because I feel like... Say it again. Like, are y'all hearing me? Because I feel like Daphne, she thought, I can change him. And, you know, he thinks that, like, you know, he shouldn't have children. He shouldn't be married. No, it's not your place to change a grown man. Yeah. She's like, I'll be the one. Why do you want to? Why do you want to waste your precious time and energy trying to make somebody be something that they are not? Meanwhile, we have the prince, you know, handsome, charming, dapper young man who's trying to give you everything. He's trying to give you the world. And then some. And she said no.
I want the one who doesn't want me. We need to stop setting that as a standard.
Stop romanticizing that idea.
Yes, because it's actually harmful. And this is how we start these relationships that are, you know, not built for success, frankly. Like, if your relationship is starting off with a man telling me, I don't want to marry you, I'm not interested in you, I'm gonna listen.
We have completely separate, like, ideals about life. And it's back to what we were saying, that trope of people need to be together against all odds. Their chemistry is insane. Okay, sure. They have intense physical chemistry. They are very attracted to each other.
That's not enough.
That's not enough. It stops there. Lust will burn out. And then what happens?
Exactly. And that's something I always look for in these types of shows with that storyline. Like, yes, you guys are physically attracted to each other. That happens. That's a thing. But can you have a conversation? Like, can you have a conversation about anything?
And they're saying they're best friends. Like, there's a point in the show where she's like, you're my best friend, and da-da-da-da. I'm like, what do you guys even talk about? You talk about your fake courtship. You laugh at the society women. To me, like, a best friend is somebody I tell everything to. He refuses to tell her about his past with his father. He refuses to tell her why he doesn't want to have children. He makes her believe that he can't have children. I don't know. My best friend doesn't treat me like that.
Exactly. And I just want to say, for those folks who do love this show, specifically our younger listeners, if y'all are listening, you can definitely love the show with that and being cognizant of the fact that that's not healthy. But if you're not cognizant of that, please heed that. Like, keep that in mind, that that's not the standard. Don't settle for these men in real life, like, who are treating you like this, who are... And I feel like that's a form of emotional manipulation, because he is trying to get something out of this, right? Like, he wants the society women to, like, get off his back, and because he's just so hot, you know, he's just so coveted.
He's just that guy,
right? So they're in this mutual, you know, beneficial relationship, and I get that, but it's just like, yeah, he starts coming in talking about, you're my best friend, this, that, and the third. But it's like, we're not seeing that, though, because you're not acting like a best friend. You're not acting like someone...
Not even a friend.
Not even a friend. Yeah. And so when he gave that whole speech to Queen Charlotte, talking about, this is my best friend, like, let us get married, I was like, we're not... This is a lie.
And then he said, oh, I meant everything. Really? I don't know. I tell my friends the truth.
Right.
Personally. And, like, I will say, those flashback scenes of him and his dad were really hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, the actor they got to play that little boy, precious. Oh. Adorable. Loved him. And just, like, he was such a good actor, and, like, seeing the way that his father treated him and spoke to him, and oh my gosh, that could make me want to cry. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but, like, the part when his dad was yelling at him, he went to pick up the hairbrush to hit him. And we know, like, Simon, he had a speech impediment when he was younger. Like, he had trouble... did he have a stutter?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, again, hinted at. We were never really given what exactly was going on. I wasn't sure if he had, like, a stutter or a speech impediment, or if he just was, like, too afraid to speak, and he, like, kept in. Yeah,
I think, probably both, it seemed like. But yeah, and so, like, when he finally, like, his dad was about to hit him, and he turned around and he was, like, struggling to say it, but he was like, no, like, don't hit me.
Yeah.
That scene, ooh. That, like, I don't know why that struck a chord, but it made me so sad for him. And so, yeah, like, I could really understand the stuff that he went through, making him so jaded and, like, feeling like he's never enough. And those feelings are perfectly valid. But to me, keeping this vow, I have air quotes around vow, to his dad that I will never marry, the Hastings line or whatever will die with me, I feel like in continuing to do that, even after his dad's death, all he was doing is letting his dad continue to have control over him.
And power.
Yeah, he said he loved Daphne and that he wanted to be with her, and they seemed to have a great relationship when they first got married. You were willing to throw all that away just to keep a promise to somebody who's not even here?
And it's like, where's the emotional maturity? Like, I don't know. I really wish that his character would have came to this, you know, conclusion that I will not be my dad. Exactly. I will be better. I will completely rebrand.
Break the cycle. You don't have to be him.
Like, break these generational curses. Also, I have to say it. It is very notable because I mentioned it earlier, in the Costuming Drama YouTube channel, on that panel where they talk about the show, they talk heavily about colorism, which is definitely can be applied to the show. But specifically, we can't...
Yeah, I just want to pause real quick on that. The only two prominent black characters, like young black characters, are both biracial or lighter skinned.
Yes. And, like, that's a form of erasure, you know? So we have to be like mindful of that. That's not saying that like biracial folks can't have representation at all. That's not the case at all. It's just time and time again in media, especially in like contemporary stuff that we're seeing right now, the only time they will have black characters, they're like, no, you can't be dark skinned, you can't, you know.
Or they're like racially ambiguous.
And so like that's sending a lot of messages that we have to be mindful of. But specifically in talking about that, when we look at Simon's father, the Duke, he's one of the only, like, he's probably the darkest character in the show, or the character with the deepest complexion. And he's a whole villain. He's a terrible human being. And it's like,
he might be the irredeemable trash.
You know what?
He's worse than Anthony.
It's down to his deathbed, you know? He's really just a trash human being. And, like, obviously, you know, people can just have horrible fathers, but it's like we can't overlook the fact that one of the only darkest skinned character on the show that we have is this awful villain, horrible person, you know? And he wasn't in the book. This was a choice. You guys casted him. You wrote this, you know, these scenes to craft him to be this awful individual. For what?
Yeah.
You know? So that's how I feel about that. But just going back with what you said, I really wished he would have, like, I was so irritated that he chose to keep this pointless, like, vow with, you know, not carrying the family name.
And moving into Daphne, do people really know so little about reproduction in this time? Like, she didn't know what pulling out was? I don't know. Like, why don't they know? Okay, she wants kids. Mm-hmm. They know the act it takes to make kids. Well, she barely did. And then someone told her, like, I don't understand how she didn't know fully. Like, what did she think was bringing the children to her?
Yeah.
Like, what did she think he was providing that would make her get pregnant if he was pulling out every time?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand how she didn't get to that conclusion. I also think it's funny that Simon thought that he was going to pull out for the rest of his life.
I know.
Never
what?
get pregnant. Like, what?
Sir, what?
That wasn't going to work. This wasn't a good plan. But, yeah, like, so for her to think that he couldn't get her, or he told her he can't have kids, and she took that literally,
like he was impotent. Yeah.
And so then when she finally found out,
okay, yeah, that whole take on the story was so troubling for a lot of reasons. Like, initially when it was happening, I felt the same way. I'm just like, Daphne, I personally feel like if you don't understand sex, you probably don't need to be having it. I don't care how old you are. Like, this is an action that can literally create a human being. It can create life.
How does she not know anything about it?
If you don't know about it, Miss Ma'am, I don't think you need to be doing the deed. That's just how I feel. I don't care if you're married. But if we take it a step further, this is something that sat with me for a while, and I didn't really know why it was troubling. But then I started reading this book, and I want to read a quote from it in a second here, but there's this whole point when she finally learns what sex is, and she's like, oh, he can. So he's been pulling out this whole time. He just doesn't want to have kids with me. So I'm going to trap him, and I'm going to make him have a kid.
That was wild.
Okay. So that, and I know, yes, this is a period piece, but that's something that happens today, right now, in like, contemporary society, in our world right now, today, in 2021. This is a whole thing. And, like, folks have talked about it before in these heterosexual relationships that are failing. Some women come to the conclusion that, you know, a baby is going to be what keeps this, you know, faulty union together. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to do some sexual acrobatics in the bed, and we're going to, if there's a will, there's a way, we're having this kid, whether he knows it or not. And that's literally what Daphne does. She does her little acrobatics and
doesn't let him pull out.
Yeah.
And then, alas.
Yeah. And so I want to read a quote from Bell Hooks' All About Love. I've started reading it recently. She's an author, a professor, an activist, and this book is really interesting. But there's a chapter where she's talking about this very thing. Like, it's so crazy. We were talking about recording this episode, and I was reading this book, and, like, light bulbs were exploding in my head. But I'm going to read this quote here. She says, "When I longed to have a baby and my male partner at the time was not ready, I was stunned by the number of women who encouraged me to disregard his feelings to go ahead without telling him." And then she also later says, I could not imagine bringing a child into this world whose father might reject him or her because he did not desire a child in the first place.
Yes. Snaps for that. Like, that's like, if Daphne knows he clearly doesn't want one, why on earth would you try to force him into having one?
Like, and how as a person could you have that much, yes, how dare you? How could you have that much disregard for your child? Because now you're birthing a human into this world with a father who didn't want them in the first place.
And how dare you do that to this person?
Yes.
Like, that, you can't force, like, that should be illegal. Is that not illegal? I don't know. I feel like that should be illegal because you cannot make somebody have a kid. Now he's forced into this commitment potentially. I mean, we know she doesn't get pregnant from that. But now he's potentially forced into this commitment, or at least this decision of, do I want to be involved? Do I want to be... Like, and that's on them for rushing into their marriage and not talking about children. And for her not asking questions, like elaborating on... It's on him for not being honest about what he meant when he couldn't have kids, and on her for not being honest and like discussing why, you know?
Yeah. And that goes sorry, really quickly, I was going to say this goes to what we're talking about miscommunication and about setting intentions and boundaries early on in the relationship. This is something that we need to be discussing with our potential partners. Do you want kids? Like, what are your political beliefs? Like, these are important things, because if you're going to have a serious relationship with another person, there's some deal breakers, right? Like, there's some things where, if I'm dating and a guy says something that goes against my personal moral code, I'm like, okay, well, I don't care how physically attracted we are to each other. Like,
we're not compatible. Like, as lifelong partners, which is what their marriage is supposed to be. Like, especially in this time, people did not get divorced. People didn't separate. And so, you want to be with this person forever, but you have fundamentally different beliefs on a family.
Yeah. And it's just like, how dare you, like... it's exactly what you said. Yes, he should have had the emotional maturity. This is your best friend, air quotes. This is someone you love, but you can't tell them the truth. That was really frustrating to me. But, Daphne, who are you to make this major life-altering decision on your own? And you don't even know, like, you just learned what sex was 2 minutes ago.
Truly.
And now you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this and get a kid. And now, when I was reading that Bell Hooks's novel, and I was really thinking about that, like, that's so heartbreaking. It breaks my heart that that's something that is happening all the time. You have these failing unions, these failing relationships, and one partner decides a kid is going to be the glue. And
it never is.
And it's not. And now you have this kid who now has to grow up, become an adult, work through this trauma that, the parents quite literally pass down onto them, thinking like, what? We don't have to do this. Just talk, communicate, be transparent, set boundaries early on, figure out intentions. Oh, gosh.
So this, maybe it was season 2. They just announced that they're dropping another season. We don't know when it will be. I don't think they've even filmed or anything yet. Maybe they'll get these things right. Maybe there will be like some fundamental changes, because the show had potential. It did have potential. It just kind of, a lot of the aspects missed the mark, in my opinion. Just looking at my notes to see if there's anything else I want to chat about.
Yeah, I'll just say, I don't know that I'll be tuning in to season 2. I really hope that they do take into consideration the constructive criticism from the show, from the first season, and make those necessary changes to the script and even the casting. I would love to see some, dark-skinned Black characters with speaking roles, other POCs, and just representation with speaking roles as, prominent characters in the second season. That would be really great. I would love to see communication and, other interesting writing techniques and dramatic techniques to move the story along and create suspense and tension, because, I think unfortunately for me, it did miss the mark, but I do think it has potential. And I definitely was still here for the pop orchestra take. That was a cool moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to say that's how I'm feeling about the show.
Yeah, I just, it was interesting. It gave me a lot of things to think about and kind of ruminate on. And, you know, I guess I'm not like upset that I watched it. I have like this I know I have it in my mind for reference when people are talking about it and things like that. And I think we had a really productive conversation about it. And so it was interesting to get another take or see how similarly felt about certain things about it. So as always, if you want to chat with us about it, feel free to head to our Instagram, our Facebook group. We are going to be launching a Discord really soon, which I think will be a really great way for us to have kind of a more direct line of communication with all of you and to chat about books, because we want to hear other people's opinions. If there's things that you got out of the show that maybe we didn't, or if something we said made you realize something, you know, we always want to chat about that and hear about that. And we will see you guys soon.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. For more updates, you can be sure to follow us on Twitter at BookSolidPod, on Instagram at BookSolidPodcast, like us on Facebook at BookSolidPodcast, and also join our group.